or two, we are having a second part, like an ad break. And that is because we want to make sure we are live on all the platforms, and hopefully we are now live on LinkedIn. So please drop in a message if you can see us now on LinkedIn, because it's so important. These conversations are about you, they're for our community. We had just introduced the show. We'd spoken about the fact that today's topic was franchise regulation, and Stewart was just about to do his introduction. So we are now going to welcome Stewart again to the franchise show. And again, perhaps Stewart, you can give us a little introduction again to yourself and to your business, and to how you got into the world of franchising.
Thank you, Harvey. Yes, so I'm Stewart Germann. I live in Auckland, New Zealand, and I'm partner in Stewart Germann Law Office, which I founded in 1993. My office is next to the Pullman Hotel, if you ever come to Auckland, near the Northern Club and the University of Auckland. How did I get into franchising? I acted for a client in 1980. He was quite entrepreneurial. He had hamburger bars in the early days, and he expanded to about 30 outlets, and I had to do the agreements, and I thought, this is a fantastic way of expanding. So you have a proven system which you've operated yourself, and then franchisees provide the capital to open the outlets. You get paid fees, but you look after them and you protect the brand. And so that's what I've been doing now for over 40 years. I've started many systems that are very successful. I'm also a mediator. I've qualified for mediation course, so I had a mediation last week, which was successful. In fact, 97% mediation rate, that's the success rate for mediations in New Zealand. It's very high. Why? Because of the relationship between franchisors and franchisees. It's very special. So that's what I do. I travel a lot. I'm going to Las Vegas in 10 days for the IFA franchise convention. There'll be 5,000 people there, and there's 41 coming from Australia and New Zealand as a delegation, so that'll be exciting. There'll be quite a few from the UK and Europe as well, because sort of America is the home of franchising, but they have their problems, as we'll talk about with the regulations. So that's a background on me. I love what I do, and yeah, it's fantastic.
Brilliant. Fantastic introduction, Stewart. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And a big congratulations to you, because you've been honoured, I believe, as well. So that's fantastic news.
Yeah, King Charles III, because we're part of the Commonwealth. So he awarded me an officer of the New Zealand Order of Merit for my services to franchising law and international franchising. So that came out on New Year's Day, and I was just over the moon. It was just fantastic. I never, in my wildest dreams. So
huge congratulations, and absolutely well deserved. And you're continuing to serve our fantastic industry. So we're gonna welcome a couple of people who have joined us live already, and then we're gonna get into today's topic. So let's first of all welcome Omar. Omar is the host of a fantastic LinkedIn show called Zoom Party, and he's a good friend of mine. Great to have you with us. We've got Leslie Flowers with us. We were talking about America. Leslie is from America, from North Carolina. Great to have you with us, Leslie. Put in your thoughts as we go along in this conversation. We have the lovely Simon Wise with us, and he's put, hello, franchise friends. We're here on LinkedIn, so that's great news to hear that we are live on LinkedIn. And Simon, look, it'd be great to have your thoughts on things today. Stewart seems to have disappeared for a little bit today, but he's put, hello, franchise friends. We're here on LinkedIn. Let's have a look at another comment. We have got one here from Simon. He's put, it's a nice office. I can vouch for that. While we wait for Stewart to come back, we can hopefully get into this conversation. So today we are talking franchise regulation. Now, of course, the UK is not specifically regulated for franchise regulation. We have regulations in the UK that cover various business activities, but not specifically to franchising. And that is the same in New Zealand, where Stewart is from. Now, with franchising and with regulation, we need to try and decide whether this is right or wrong. Thank you very much, Simon. I'm going to do my best, but you know what? You really need somebody who knows about franchise regulation to talk about it. We will wait a few minutes to see if Stewart can come back on the live stream. If not, we are going to have to restart this in a few minutes. But look, we do want to get your questions. So if you are here, if you've got a question about franchise regulation, should it be regulated? Is that good? Is that bad? That's what we need to discuss as an industry. You know, is regulation the answer to any kind of challenges that we have in the franchise industry? And are sectors and communities of franchising that are regulated, are they better? You know, have they done things better? Are they protecting their franchisees better with regulation? You know, is it the answer to deal with some of those challenges? We've got Stewart coming back, and I have to say I'm pleased to have him back.
I don't know what happened, but I disappeared.
Oh, Stewart, you know what? You've saved me there, because as I was talking along about franchise regulation, I realized that really I need my good friend Stewart to be with me to talk about franchise regulation. Anyway, look, it's lovely to have you back.
Thank you.
Hopefully, if you go again, just keep coming back. We are not going to give up here, okay? So it doesn't matter what tech issues they throw.
Never give up. Never give up.
No, we're not giving up. We're not giving up. Right. So let's get into it. I was just saying about the fact that franchising here in the UK is not specifically regulated as an industry, and that's very similar in New Zealand as well. And then, of course, there are other areas of the world where regulation is, you know, is certainly, you know, more in depth and covers the industry specifically. America being one of those. What's your sort of take on this right now? You know, we asked a very simple question. You know, should it be regulated, yes or no? You know, what's your view at the moment as to where we're at as an industry?
So my view is that it may be inevitable that there's regulation, and you know, globally, but at the moment, I think a number of countries with their self-regulation are doing it very well, including the UK, Singapore, and New Zealand. But there's got to be a reason to have regulation. So when you bring in regulation, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to protect the franchisor and the brand? No. Are you trying to protect franchisees who come into a system and there's an unscrupulous franchisor who might try and rip them off? Yes. So the regulation tends to be concentrated on disclosure of information. And so in New Zealand, and like the UK, we have a voluntary system. So the Franchise Association was formed in 1996. We'd been part of Australia. Australia was having problems with some court cases where franchisees were bringing action against franchisors. We could see that Australia was going to have regulation, laws. So we broke away and formed the Franchise Association of New Zealand. So we've got our own rules, code of practice, code of ethics, which I wrote in 1996. They haven't been changed much. And so the Franchise Association of New Zealand, known as FANZ, self-regulate. So anyone joining, and there's like 180 franchisors and lawyers, accountants, banks, and franchisees can join, but I think there's only 2 because they're working in their business. They don't have time, and the franchisor normally just gives them all the information. They have to comply with the code of practice and ethics. So they have a disclosure document, and that must contain accurate and truthful information. So when you look at Australia and America, they have America has the FDD, Australia has a similar disclosure document. They're always changing their code of conduct. In Australia, it's called a code of conduct. And it's geared for that. It's geared to jump on franchisors who mislead potential franchisees into a system. And the government body, the regulatory body, which in Australia is the ACCC, they have a lot of punitive powers. They can fine franchisor companies, and in certain instances they can attack the directors. So that's the basis of regulation. To me, the UK has been doing it very well as well, and you've had the odd case, but again, franchisors on the whole are very, very good. You always get what I call the renegade ones, but the franchise grapevine worldwide is pretty good to hear systems that are bad, and I won't hesitate as a franchise attorney when I've been asked by a new franchisee to look at an agreement. If I've had problems with that system, you've got to be careful. But I might say to the franchisee, well, you do your due diligence really carefully, because I understand the system had a few problems last year. And if you get some negative feedback and you don't like it, look for another opportunity. Just walk away. Don't be scared. So that's my advice with regulation. Yes, it's great, but it's got to come in for a purpose. And what's it going to do when it's there?
Yeah, look, you made some really interesting points there. And when you talk about something like an FDD, a disclosure document, you're talking about transparency, and transparency isn't necessarily to do with regulation. Transparency is to people making sure both parties understand what they're getting into, and that's not necessarily to do with regulations. You spoke about due diligence, right?
Yes.
And that is due diligence on the side of both parties. I said when we were looking to talk about this, when you take a water company, when you take a holiday company, when you take a telephone company, right? They're all heavily regulated by government bodies, but are they perfect? Probably not. So I agree with. I'm not against regulation. I'm not for regulation. I want to have this debate. I want to know. What I am for is for franchising to be good. What I am for is for parties to be protected, to parties to enjoy franchising, to understand what they're getting into. And for me, regulation might be a part of a jigsaw puzzle, but it's a small piece of a jigsaw puzzle. And unless it's the right piece, it's not going to fit into the jigsaw puzzle very well. If you just have it for the sake of it, it will create bureaucracy, red tape. But if you have it, like you said, what is it going to do? What is it there for? I think that's so relevant in this conversation.
Yeah, well, the British Franchise Association has very high standards, like fans in New Zealand. So to me, it's been regulating the industry very well in relation to the members. So a lot of very well-known brands belong to the BFA, and the BFA is to me, it's very well managed by a board and has a good reputation. So, why would UK be looking at franchise regulation? It's been off the radar until about a week or so ago, when I read about Starmer vows to renew franchise legislation in response to the Vodafone case, which you'll know more about. But it appears that a franchisee took his life because of pressure from Vodafone. So we don't know all the facts, but to me that would be a very tragic reason to bring in franchise regulation countrywide, unless it's been drilled down. There's been another 10 complaints, 100 complaints. I'll give you an example. Quite a few years ago, when Helen Clark was our Prime Minister, she had about 3 terms of 3 years and was very good, and then she went to the UN. But we've got a franchise system called Greenacres, which is very well thought of. They obviously started with mowing lawns, and they developed into cleaning, ironing, etc. And there was a man who was appointed as a master franchisee for a region, and it was to do with ironing. So he then, and even though they were a member of FANS, because the Franchise Association existed, he then started to misrepresent to potential franchisees what they could earn from an ironing franchise. And it got worse because he preyed on immigrants with English as their second language. And I'm sure the UK's had that problem too. So he got up to about 30 franchisees. No, he got far more. But anyhow, they were what I call ripped off. They didn't make the money. So they then went to the government and said, we've been ripped off. The government looked at bringing in franchise regulation. They actually had a white paper on it. They took it seriously. But in the end, they decided there is no reason for franchise regulation in New Zealand at this time. So that would be now 25, 30 years ago. So at this time, I always remember those words because that left the door open. So has there been a move since then to bring it in with people being ripped off? No. Have people been ripped off? Well, there's always someone who doesn't do their due diligence or is lied to. But we have the Fair Trading Act, the Commerce Act, a number of the Commercial and Contracts Act. We have a number of acts as a lawyer that I can use against a franchisor if we have to. And they've got very sort of onerous provisions. And I've been involved in a few cases. So we have the laws, but it's not franchise specific. So then you come back to the question, which the UK is grappling with. Do you need regulation at this time? And it's certainly not because of the Vodafone case, in my opinion. That's the catalyst for the government to look at it. But there's got to be lots of examples of people being ripped off and misled and losing money, in my opinion, before you'd even counter it, bringing in regulation. So that's sort of setting the scene widely.
Yeah, I think you're right. Look, I think the very first thing I want to say about what you said is the tragic case. And I want to say on behalf of everybody that is absolutely tragic. And my heart goes out to the families of the people involved there. And look, it's part of the reason why I want to have this conversation, because it's really important that we understand what is right, what is wrong, how we can improve things, how people can have a better experience with franchising, and what needs to be done to get things right. There are lots of great things, but unfortunately, if tragedy happens like that, then people have to take notice. But I think what's really important is the right things are done so that something like that never happens again.
I agree. That's tragic. Yeah. And the end of my case, Harvey, I've forgotten to tell you, was that the guy, Keith Lapham, was prosecuted for fraud and he went to jail. So under the Crimes Act, he committed fraud against these franchisees, but we had the laws to deal with that. So I have no sympathy for fraud. But, it's one of the worst things you can do to people. But the laws were there, and I can assure you the laws are there in the UK, because you will have a Crimes Act which will cover that. And you have other acts which will cover all sorts of things.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned there some acts that come in, and they're important things to bring into this conversation, that we do have laws to protect people, but we've got to have transparency, right? Look, the two words, transparency from both sides and due diligence from both sides, can go a long way. And look, I really encourage franchisees that listen to this now or listen to the recording as well in the future, because this is really important, okay? Like Stewart said, really research what you're getting into. Really try and understand every aspect of the business. If there's an FDD, really look into every aspect of that. Look into the item 19, look into those financials. But if there's not, look, talk to the network, right? If you've got a business you're interested in and they've got existing franchisees, talk to every one of them, right? Really do that, because you'll get an understanding of what the experience is like being a franchisee. If it was me investing in a franchise, I would probably talk, if they had 20 franchisees, I'd talk to every single one of them, right? Because you're investing a lot of money, you're investing a lot of emotion, a lot of time, a lot of potential risk there. You know, there's fantastic things in franchising. You know, it's vastly more successful in terms of versus a non-franchised business that doesn't already have things in place to create that success. But it's not an easy ride. It's not a guarantee success by any means. And you've got to do that due diligence. You mentioned that before, Stewart. How important do you think due diligence is from the point of view of a franchisee in this process?
It's essential, and due diligence includes going to your own independent accountant to get the figures looked at and to get projected cash flows and profitability. To get a franchisor lawyer attorney to look at the franchise agreement, and if there's a disclosure document and any other documents relating to the premises, which often include leases. But then to talk to the franchisees, I always say pick at least 6. If you have 20, it's hard to do 20, but pick at least 6 random, not the ones the franchisor says to go and see, but random ones, because you're really asking the franchisees, how do you find the franchisor in relation to support? What was the initial training like? Is there ongoing training? Does the franchisee have the staff to look after you when you get to a critical point? There's franchise managers, field managers, and the like. And if you have an annual conference, you've been in the system 5 years, what's the mood of the conference? Is the franchisor progressive? Do they get sort of really clued up people in different industries coming to talk to you at the conference? But also, obviously, when you're looking at going in, you'll be interviewed by the franchisor. But again, interviewing is a two-way process, so don't be scared to ask the franchisor the 20 questions. And I've got a checklist that I give prospective franchisees, which has all those sort of questions to ask. So it's two-way. And often franchisors, they have people layer down to interview, but if there's 2 directors, you should meet them. It's no good the directors not wanting to meet potential franchisees, because they're going to have a relationship with these people for 5, 10, 20 years. And so the critical thing in franchising is the relationship, because you're building on a relationship. If you want to buy an independent business, you'll say goodbye to the vendor when you settle. You won't see the vendor again. The same when you buy a house. You won't see the person selling the house again. But you will see the franchisor often, and the franchisor will have contact. So you've actually got to sort of like the person. You've got to trust the person, because franchising, I say, is built on mutual trust and respect. And if those elements are missing, it will fail. So like due diligence is essential.
I think I really like the fact that it should be built on trust to a degree, and that you like the people, you like the organizations. These words are hard to quantify. They're hard to put into a box and tick them off to make sure that is solid. But you can't do that with trust. It has to come from a feeling, but it has to come from then a series of things you do. You wisely said there that there's a series of questions you would always recommend asking. I mean, yes. Maybe we can get those shared on this platform, because look, if we can get people asking good questions, robust questions that the answers really give them information that not only lets them understand what this franchise is, whether it's right for them, whether it's going to be good for them, whether it's going to make a profit. Because look, you shouldn't steer away from this word, right? No. About making money. People buy into a franchise business to make money, right? It's a big part of it. There's so much of this is the story, this is the reason that we want to get into this business. But don't steer away from the fact that one of the reasons you want to get into a business is to make money and not turnover. You want to make profit. You want to see about this return on investment. We're going to go to a comment that Joe made. It's a big comment. We're going to take it a bit by bit. And we've got a comment coming up here from Simon as well. But look, I think it's really important. We're only, half an hour or so into this, and we've already come across some really interesting things to say. Transparency, both sides. Due diligence, both sides. Pick 5, 6 random franchisees. Have your questions, and whether you get those from a fantastic resource and person like Stewart, or whether you come up with your own questions, but come up with robust questions, right? Because just like you said, when you meet those directors, and those directors, you could be working with those for 5, 10, 15 years, right? It's a big chunk of time. It's a big chunk of investment. So it's really, really important. But look, there's some great actionable things that you can do as a franchisee so that you can avoid making a decision to invest in the wrong business. I'm going to say the wrong business. That could be the wrong business because it's just not right for you and what you want to achieve. Or that could be the wrong business because you just don't feel that they're in a robust position to be able to achieve that return on investment or give you that lifestyle that you want. But if in doubt, don't, right? You've got to feel confident.
Walk away.
Yeah.
Walk away at the moment if you're looking at going into a new franchise. And what we're finding out, there's a few negatives about it. The fees are far too high, in my opinion, for the type of business. So she's going to come into the office tomorrow. But I won't be afraid to say, if you have any doubts, walk away, because there's lots of opportunities out there. You've got to be fully committed. And if you haven't had your questions answered or you're suspicious, then it won't work. And that's why there's a cooling off clause in our code, but it's only 7 days. So if you sign a franchise agreement, you've got 7 days to cool off or change your mind. And all franchisors I know, they hardly ever have that to look at. But if a franchisee says, I've cooled off and I want my money back, they get their money back, because it's the long-term relationship which counts. So then you bring that into the regulation part, Harvey. How will regulation handle that? Well, it handles all the pre-contractual stages, and it'll handle if the franchisor has lied or misrepresented to the franchisee after, but it won't handle the relationship side or the trust side. So that's why you've got to assess it beforehand, because normally what you see is what you get. People don't change. So if someone's been convicted for fraud 10 years ago, are they going to reform? Well, you would hope they will, but often they don't, because there's a problem there. So, just do your due diligence carefully. And if you have doubts, I say walk away.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, it was my lovely mother-in-law that actually said, "If in doubt, don't." That exact expression I use. So I will thank her for that, because I think it's relevant here, right? It is relevant here. You might be really excited about your franchise opportunity that's laid out in front of you, but if there's something niggling there, right? It may still be the right business opportunity for you, but iron that out first. Work out why that's niggling. Work out why you've got that doubt. But like you say, walk away. Take some time, step back. You may well be talking to somebody that has a call-off period, and that's great. I think call-off periods are fantastic. Sometimes you can get overexcited in a moment, but this is a business opportunity that takes a lot of thought, a lot of due diligence, a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of emotional investment, excuse me. So it's really important to make sure you made that right decision. Sorry, go on.
Just one comment. The key thing is with Australia, their disclosure regime is so full now, so robust. So franchisees are presented with like a 200-page disclosure document, because they have to have copies of the leases, copies of all the main contracts. It goes on and on. So having talked to many franchisees, and also my friendly Australian lawyers, I've asked them, they would think that more than half of the franchisees don't read the disclosure document. So it's mandatory disclosure by law, But so if you give someone 200 pages and you say, read all this on the weekend and come back and ask me questions, they don't read 200 pages.
No.
They'll read the first 10. All they want to know is, how much is it going to cost to get in? What are the ongoing fees? Can I sell? How do I get out? What's the term of years? Is there a dispute resolution clause if I have a dispute? Do they go to mediation or litigation? That's the sort of thing. They don't read all the things in this, and you can't give projections and DDs because you'll get clobbered. You can only give actual figures. So that's regulation brought in. Does it help the consumer or potential franchisee? Maybe. Do they read everything? No. And so that's another problem. There's a lot of paper being produced and it's sort of unread because the legislation requires that you give a potential franchisee everything.
Yeah, that is a really, really good point that you've made there, actually. Because yes, you can have regulation. If regulation says that you need to detail out this, I won't keep going on to 200, but if that represents that you have to have 200 pages, it's like terms and conditions in a mobile phone contract or whatever it might be.
You don't read them.
No, and the mobile phone company says, they've brought in a lawyer to make sure that these terms and conditions protect them, perhaps protect the person, the contract, probably to protect them. But it's so long, it's so lengthy, it's so complicated that nobody really understands it. Nobody has the time to read it. So therefore, the value of it as as a piece of information or a document that's supposed to inform, supposed to give transparency, completely erodes away because it's too much. It's not giving relevant, important information. But look, I suppose that's where someone like yourself, that's where having a great lawyer, having somebody who understands what is relevant and what is perhaps more standard, what is sticking out in a contract. Because look, here in the UK, yes, we don't have specific regulation, but we do have a franchise agreement. We do have, an ops manual. Let's talk about a franchise agreement. If you are a prospective franchisee and you're looking to invest, then go to somebody you trust, somebody who not just understands law, but understands franchising as well, and understands franchising in the region that you're based, right? Or at least understands what that law, what that sort of marketplace looks like, because they can take that contract and they can say, okay, well, look, it looks all right, but I really need to draw your attention to these elements of this. Are you comfortable with this? Does it sit right with you, right? And I think then, as long as you've got that person that you trust, that's another piece of the jigsaw puzzle to bring into that, isn't it? To make sure you understand it.
Yes.
Absolutely. If you have just joined us today, we are talking about franchise regulation. It's great to have everyone with us that has joined us now. It's great to have everyone with us that joins us and watches this on the recording, which there are many. So we've got a comment here from Simon. He put, there lies in the problem. The regulatory framework can act as a safety blanket to the detriment of the good due diligence on the part of the franchisee. It's a great point here, Simon. Yes, I think the FDD can do this a little bit, right? You can sort of say as a franchisor, and I'm going to come on to another argument, but a positive one for an FDD as well. But the negative on it is that you've got this great big lengthy document, and as a franchisor, you can go, well, look, we've done that document, we've covered out all the bases on that, we've got our agreement. And then a franchisee can go, okay, well, someone's got that document in place. They must be a good, these types of things. What do you make as a regulatory framework being a safety blanket? Is that a false thing, or does it provide a safety blanket?
Well, franchisees won't even register that there's regulatory framework. They'll just look at the FDD, and they won't understand that if there's lies in it, they can attack it. And what are the remedies, because that won't be explained. So yes, and I think Simon's bang on here. It's a safety blanket, but again, they have to do their thorough due diligence, because what you see is often not what you get. You have to sort of dig behind that. So due diligence is right up there, and you've mentioned it many times, Harvey, and so have I. Regulation, if it comes in, is there. And why is it there? Because if something's not right, something's lied, if there's misleading information in the DD, then there's some teeth in regulation to attack the franchisor.
Yeah.
But people think they're going to get their money back. So you might put 300,000 into a franchise. It goes wrong. You don't follow the rules properly. And it's the old story of, I've done nothing wrong. The franchisor caused this, which is, lies, because they haven't operated their business. They come to me and say, we want to attack the franchisor and get our money back. Well, you don't get all your money back. Even if there's a valid case, you get some of the back, but you don't get all your money back normally, and you don't get all the legal fees covered, because that's not what law is. The law is not is often not fair, but it'll put you back in a position where you can live with it. So you try and avoid litigation because it's expensive, uncertain, and stressful.
Yeah.
Which is where mediation comes in.
Mediation, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, you're right. You're right. I said that I would try and talk about FDDs, which of course are in the US a part of regulation, and talk about them in a positive way. And this is actually a comment that came in from Joe when we put this episode out, and he's put that that a disclosure document allows a uniform document that a franchisee, if they're interested in 3 brands, let's say as an example, that they can take 3 documents that are all prepared in the same way, in the same order, and therefore it then gives it may make it easier to compare like for like. You go, okay, well, what are they saying about this? Then what are they saying about this? And so on and so forth, rather than approaching things in a sort of more rounded way where you're getting more of a feel of it. What do you make of that element of a particular regulation? Hold on, Stuart has just dropped out. Let's just bring him back. So I was
right.
I was just saying, what do you make about the FDDs and them being a positive part of regulation because it's a framework?
Yeah, no, they are positive because they give lots of valuable and important information. But we are doing it in New Zealand, and you are doing it in the UK without regulation because we have high standards. We are self-regulating. So if you're going into a franchise system in New Zealand, the question says, do you belong to fans? Yes or no? And if you do, then you have to have a disclosure document which will follow the headings of 1 to 20, like you said, Harvey, and you can compare different systems. If there's many franchisees who don't belong to fans, but they still have a disclosure document, and then there's ones who don't belong to fans, they don't want to join, they don't reach the standard, they don't have a DD, and that's the ones you have to look at very carefully if you want to get in. So if you compare 3 DDs, but the key thing is to be excited by the brand and the system you're getting into. So, what do you want? Do you want retail? Do you want a service industry? Do you want food? And it's, if you're going to compare a retail operation with a food operation and have 3 different DDs, you've got to think, what do I want to do? And you really have to focus on the industry and then narrow down the opportunities. Otherwise, you'll have hard decision making because you can't really compare, a coffee club with a retail operation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of that can, in terms of what direction you're going for franchising, a lot of that can come from less quantifiable things. That can come from what you're interested in, what you're passionate about, what you've got experience in. And I think that's okay, actually. That's where you don't necessarily, at that point, you're just deciding how to narrow down your choice. So
Yes.
the due diligence part of that doesn't come in until you're starting to really then select the brands that you want to work with. We've got a good question coming up from Simon, and I'm going to come to something else that Joe has said, because it's an interesting statement. He's put the claim that regulation will kill franchising isn't supported by evidence. The scale and durability of franchising in the US, Canada, and several US states show that sensible regulation and growth can coexist. What do you make of the statement of regulation killing franchising? Can it be that negative?
No, that's wrong. That's misleading. So if regulation comes in, it will not kill franchising. It will kill unscrupulous franchisors who deserve to be killed, out of the industry. But it will enhance good franchising.
What I will say is that, apologies if you didn't get that, but that's what Joe was saying as well. He's saying that it will enhance it. He's saying absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
As long as it's sensible regulation. And I think that's a key term there. He's also put here, it helps explain why many of the franchise brands dominating the UK market are American. They tend to arrive with proven unit economics, audited financials, and operating systems already tested at scale. Look, I agree with those statements within the context of what might be considered to be a good franchise brand. But I think sometimes you can also get proven economics, audited financials, and operating systems within a self-regulated environment. But you need to do that due diligence, of which you still need to do. This is the point. You still need to do that due diligence in a heavily regulated environment.
You do.
We all know that an FDD and an item 19, there are different ways in which franchisors in a regulated environment where they have to produce an FDD, there are different ways that they can put that information down. There are different ways that they can use that when they're marketing and promoting it. So it's not as simple and straightforward as what is written on that page is what you can believe as what you will be able to achieve. It's based on something. And Joe's made this point in the past, actually, as long as a franchisor is explaining what that is based on, right? If they have used something, it's a real figure. This is what the figure is. This is where it's come from. And you don't it's not the highest figure. Maybe it's an average figure. Maybe it's a particular site. Is it company owned? Is it a franchise site? All of these things. It's very, very important to understand the context of the claims being made, isn't it?
Yeah. So Joe's comment is bang on. I agree with it. Then you have to say, what is the driver to bring in regulation? Do we need it? What are the reasons to bring it in? And a reason is, not because Australia and the US have it. That's not a reason. But if the UK is looking at bringing it in, you need to know why. What are the 10 reasons to bring it in? One reason is not good enough. You've got to have a real depth of reasoning. And I can assure you, as at now, there's no driver or main reasons to bring in franchise regulation in New Zealand, because we're doing it to a high standard. The fans has a relationship with the government. We're looking at all sorts of things, especially the way employees are treated. And the key thing coming in worldwide is modern slavery. Okay, so that's been looked at now.
I think you're right as well. It's why you bring it in, right? We mentioned at the start the tragic case, and it's in the news. We can't talk. I don't want to talk about the case. We can't talk about it in depth, of course. This Vodafone case, but look, when the result of that comes out, there is going to be a reason for what happened, okay, and that will be uncovered and dealt with. And therefore, there may be a reason to take that element of it and either create regulation for that, or at least create a new way of doing things to make sure that is covered out, that it doesn't happen again. But it may not be regulation that comes from, it may be. But what I think we need to do is to make sure regulation, if it came in, did what it's meant to do. And you can't make sure of that until you know why and what it's got to do. You know, it's important to try and understand that. You know, let's have a look. We've got a comment here from Simon. Let's have a look at this one, and then we're probably going to go to the last part of the show. Simon's put, Stuart, what is your advice to the UK franchisor community? Should they be vehemently defending self-regulatory franchise environment that currently exists? So yeah, should should we do that? Should we defend it? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, you should defend it. And if you don't defend it, then that shows that you think it's not working, and you should have regulation. So there's no sort of fence to jump on here. It's either defend or not defend. So you should defend it. Yeah.
I mean, look, I think it's been great to have this conversation. It's a very important conversation to have. I really hope that when franchisors watch this, that they take on board the transparency part of this. They're really getting to know their potential franchisees, make sure they're right for the brand, make sure they understand what they're getting into, make sure they understand the potential pitfalls, the potential challenges, really get to the bottom of the fact that they understand what they're getting themselves into, make sure they understand the risks, the financial risks, make sure that they're at least not necessarily financially protected, but at least they understand that they're risking money and it could be successful or it might not be. It just because it's a franchise system doesn't guarantee that success. And they need to be really, really sure of what they're doing with that investment when they do it. And franchisees, potential investors, when you listen to this, okay, speak to Stewart, speak to franchisees, speak to people you know, speak to other franchise brands, do your due diligence, find out about unit economics, find out about this franchise brand, find out about the directors, find out everything you possibly can about that brand, right? Really understand it, okay? Because part of your protection is what you can do and your own due diligence. Let's have a quick look. Mandy's coming back in and saying congratulations to you for your time with the King and your commendation.
Thank you, Mandy.
It's fantastic. Look, we've got another comment here. Let's have a look. Simon's put, they need to understand how they will need to change to accommodate regulation and what impact it will have on their businesses. Yeah, if regulation comes here in the UK, absolutely. Franchisors are going to need to understand what it means. And look, not just what it means, but how to make the best of it, right? If it comes in, how do they, of course, adhere to the regulation, but how do you create the best franchise you can whilst adhering to the regulation? But remember, hopefully you can do that before regulation as well. So it's not just if it comes in, you do that anyway. Look, we have come to the end of today's conversation. It's been a really good one. It's been a very worthwhile conversation. It's a debate that will continue. It's a debate that's important. So please pop in questions, pop in comments. We can still go to this afterwards. We're going to do a newsletter all about this and a poll later on today. So please get involved in this very important conversation. Now, this is part of the show where we're going to stop talking about franchise regulation for a little bit. It's also the part of the show where I will drop off the screen, visually speaking, for a moment or two, while I put on this beauty of a hat, which you will now be able to see. Now, this was
quality.
Absolutely. This was made for me by Paul Murphy of PJ Murphy and Sons. And Paul works for a franchise brand, but he's also a passionate hatter. So he made me a lovely hat. So if you want one, reach out to Paul. So this is the part of the show where a little bit of fun. We find out a little bit about Stewart, and Stewart gets to ask me any question he likes. So I'm going to ask you, Stewart, and you can choose from any three of these. Have you got a interesting hobby? Have you got some sort of claim to fame? Now, we know somebody famous you've met, but so perhaps you could explain what that was like. But anything like that. Yeah, let us know.
Claim to fame? No. Who have I met?
Yeah.
Who have I met, Harvey? What have I told
Charles?
you?
Yeah. What was that? Tell us what that was like. Did you get to talk to him?
No, it's all done through the Governor General.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so in New Zealand, like Commonwealth countries, there's a Governor General who sits in for the King.
Amazing.
And yeah, but I was at the Northern Club last year when the portrait of King Charles was. He had a portrait done by an artist, and that was revealed, and it's really good. So if you come to the Northern Club, I'll take you to lunch in Auckland. You can see the King on the wall while you eat your New Zealand oysters and fillet steak.
I'll take you up on that. Sounds amazing. Well, I also promised that you could get your own back on me today, and you can ask me any question you like. So now is the time if you'd like to ask me anything you choose.
So why haven't you come to New Zealand, and when will it be on your agenda to see the world? Because it's only 2 flights. In fact, next year Qantas is releasing a flight from London to Sydney non-stop.
Oh wow!
You're the longest flight in the world, and then there's only 3 hours from Sydney. So when are you coming, Harvey?
Amazing. Well, look. First of all, I absolutely want to come. It's definitely one of the places in the world that I'd love to visit, and America as well. You know, we have lots of people from America looking at this show. Franchising is worldwide. I'm privileged and lucky to be able to talk to people like this, and to be able to experience some of these sectors and countries. But as soon as I can, and you'll be the top of my list to come and visit, sir.
Oh, good. And for those of you passionate wanting to come to New Zealand, we have the annual franchise conference will be in Wellington in June. So 22, 23, 24 June, there'll be a top program with a keynote speaker from the US. And so if you're interested, just email me. Brilliant. But it's a quality franchise conference.
Fantastic. What we will do is we're going to put a few links up in the newsletter that's coming out. Stuart, if you, we'll share that particular link, we'll put that up there.
Right.
Well, so yeah, absolutely get involved. If you are coming over to New Zealand, then absolutely visit that conference. Very important. Well, there you go. We have come to the end of today's episode. Thank you so much for everyone who's joined us here live on LinkedIn and on YouTube. And thank you very much to our fantastic guest, Stewart Germann, and thank you for supporting us along the way as well. Now,
thanks, Harvey.
You're very welcome. Now, it only leaves me now to say what's happening next week on the franchise show. So next week, we are talking low-cost franchising. And we have a fantastic chat from Green King, which is a pub franchise, which actually fits into that low-cost franchise model. So it'll be very interesting to see how it fits into a low-cost franchise model. But it's going to be a great discussion. Low-cost franchising, I think, is very relevant and a very interesting topic. So please join us next Tuesday, the 17th of February at 5:15 GMT, 12:15 EST, and about 6:15 in the morning in New Zealand. The next day.
Thank you. The next day.
Excellent. Brilliant. Well, we are going to end now, and I will see you next week, my friends.
Take care. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.